What are some myths people still strongly believe? Timmy Walker 90 said that Einstein failed his grade school math class. It was the subject of a Ripley's Believe It or Not column in 1935, and Einstein himself refuted the article. In primary school he had been at the top of class, and by 15 he had mastered differential and integral calculus. XSA and Luke said this comes due to the fact that he went to school in Switzerland, where the grading system is inverse to the German. German's grading system says that 1 is the best and 6 is the worst, and in Switzerland 6 is the best and 1 is the worst. OBV, he had 6 in maths and science but was all in all just an average student. Source C=Meg2 book, with grades around 4.5 to 5. These marks would have been tremendously bad in German grades. OBV. Smashing Her said fat turns into muscle during workout. Edit. Yes, I know many people who actually believe that fat cells transform into muscle cells when you work out, and skinny people need to get fat before gaining muscle. It's not metaphorical. Also, another common fitness-related myth is sweating on its own causes fat loss, which is not true. It's only water weight that'll be lost. Cactus said so many people think narwhals are mythical. A more serious one, that people who have been hurt or oppressed are morally better. My mom thought that because she had been hurt by her dad, whatever she did to the family was somehow justified. The Hutus were legitimately oppressed by the Tutsis, but to be fair, that comes back to Leopold, the patron saint of Africa. All people are fundamentally similar. Coyote Carter said, or that hymens fucking cover the vagina at all. Hymens are just like a ring around the edge. Women don't need to bleat at all. We just usually lose our virginity from stupid boys who don't know a thing about sex. If a girl is properly relaxed and loose, which won't happen until we stop talking about how painful sex will be when the hymen breaks, she won't bleed. Sorry for ranting, I just hate how badly people are still educated about female anatomy and sex. SJ4II said, as the mother of a child on the spectrum, this stupid fake report has been a thorn in my side. I noticed something was off at 2 months old when he wasn't looking at me or smiling back or responding to his name, long before he had the MMR. When he was diagnosed years later, we realized my husband also checked off the boxes, so did his dad and his brother. It's genetic, and if people would truly look at themselves or their kids, they'd realize that it was there long before vaccines were invented. Malayami said, my grandfather had brain damage since birth because of lack of oxygen. Could barely read. Got kicked out of school for being too dumb. But he was put to work, learned the trade, and ended up having a family. Not because he wasn't disabled, but because back in the 40s they just put able-bodied, intellectually disabled kids to physical labor. There wasn't as much stigma against him eventually marrying because there wasn't a label yet. People act like disabilities didn't exist, but people just didn't write about them for most of history unless it happened to rich people. And no one cared to define or classify intellectual issues unless they happened to rich people. Jamie Singh said, and they keep adding to the list of things vaccines cause. According to them, vaccines contain fetal DNA, they don't, that turns kids gay and or trans, and that there's no proof homosexuals and trans people existed before vaccines. Have you ever checked VRs for their fictional vaccine injuries? They list the dumbest thing as being a vaccine injuries, including bad bleach jobs, tattoos, Gulf War syndrome, gunshot wounds, motorcycle accidents, buttock crushing, whatever that is, suicide, murder, etc. The Shining 02 said, the women pee out of their vaginas. And for people who are just now discovering this, women do not indeed pee out of their vaginal canal, they urinate from their urethra, which is located at the opening of the canal, or could be a little more upwards towards the clitoris. Edit. I never thought my first award would be on anatomy of females. For more clarification, people use the word vagina incorrectly, describing the whole outside and inside portion. The vulva is everything on the outside, such as the clitoris, urethra, labia minora and majora, and the vaginal opening. The vagina is the whole canal that goes to the uterus, ovaries, cervix, and fallopian tubes. The urethra is in different places on every female. Sometimes it's closer to the clitoris or it's closer to the vaginal opening. Sometimes it may be a little bit inside the vaginal opening. I highly suggest people look at a diagram of the vulva to better educate yourselves and to not spread false information. Daryl Van Horn said, I thought we peed from the clitoris. Watching porn for the first time at 12, some dude going down on a chick. And I asked my buddy, with so much confidence, why is he licking her pee hole? She answered, annoyed and disappointed, that's your clit. So my brain tied the two together. Didn't find out where it actually was till after my second child, at 28 years old, when I was on a road trip. Had to pee and my husband asked if we should stop. I said hell no. I got this. Sealed the water bottle around my clitoris, and then, pissed myself, in the car. Did some googling on the female anatomy after that, and showed my husband how dead wrong I was. We can't all be scholars, you know? Sherper said. There's an episode of House where Cuddy's mother comes to visit and the topic comes up. Wilson mentions there are studies to this effect and Cuddy's mother just says in response, well, I didn't do any studies. I just raised 2 children. Then Wilson looks all chastised like she just epically owned him. I'm always thinking, bitch, that's not how that works. Your anecdotal non-scientific experience doesn't trump actual research. Safuartist John Candy said. Sounds like the son of my mom's old boss. Dad was CEO of an insurance company and did a term as the president of the country club. Catholic high school and non-Ivy League college paid for internships that were all from his dad's networking, and when he graduated he had a new car, apartment and nice entry-level job at a local Fortune 500 company. His dad would brag about how amazing his son has done in life and how he is already looking for a home in an expensive part of the city. My mom could never tell if he really believed his own bullshit or not. All he had to do was get decent grades and he had it made. Hell, in college he could have had all D's and still been fine. Crivens 999 said. Even without being in a family of great wealth, even half-decent wealth will do. I always remember a bloke in work who just couldn't give a monkey's. Aimed to get made redundant in difficult times by doing practically nothing and getting stuff wrong on purpose. Got a nice big redundancy check and lived off his family for a year. Went up Everest and everything. Then got a cushy job with a company his dad knew, accountant or lawyer I forget. The guy was a right twat and I'm still there 20 years later working my arse off and paying the mortgage. Midnight Reborn said. LOL, the gov already has you microchipped. It's just externally placed and your fucking smartphone, you dumb fucking twat. Not you, the people who actually believe the delusion. They already know everything about you, because you willingly submit all of your personal details to websites and social media. Why the fuck would they need a microchip and how the fuck would it ever be installed? Into what operating system? Because that mush between your ears doesn't and will never come close to qualifying as such. Mr. Fair in Hate said. The whole women attempt suicide more, men complete it more statistic. It's all down to the definitions being used. Previous studies included acts of self-harm in the attempt definition regardless of whether the person wanted to end their life. This causes a bias towards women because they are more likely to report self-harming, via cutting. The problem is that we also know that self-harm is not correlated with suicide ideation. When you define attempt as intentional self-harm with the intention of being fatal, the definition everyone used when quoting the line above, the number of attempts between men and women start looking more equal. It's a pet peeve of mine because the statistic is not only potentially wrong but it serves no purpose but a tool for use within the competition of who has it worse. Source, https://www.uptata.com/content/suicidal-ideation-and-behavior-in-h37044294999. Person Club member said. The Great Library of Alexandria housed troves of scientific information, and its destruction at the hands of Christian anti-science zealots held back human progress by centuries. All of those details are false. When it was destroyed, it hadn't been used to store books in centuries. When it stored books, it doesn't store anything remarkably special. There were libraries all over antiquity and book copying was standard, so anything worth copying in Alexandria would have existed in other libraries anyway. It was burned down once accidentally by Julius Caesar, centuries before its destruction. When it was destroyed by Pope Theophilus, the main issue they had with it was that as a museum, literally, shrine for the muses, it was a pagan religious building. It's all laid out on the Wikipedia page, https://en.m.org/wiki/library_of_Alexandria. DS system failed said. This does happen and I've seen it. In a trailer park years ago, a woman was begging for help in her trailer while her boyfriend was trying to get in with baseball bat. My mom told me not to call 911 because we'd get roped in, and if she really was in trouble she'd call herself. Fast forward 10 minutes and he breaks in and beats her to death with a bat and leaves. Police weren't notified by anyone but her landlord 2 days later. We all assumed someone else called. No one did. Double Stitch said. Trial testimony established that Winston Moseley attacked Genovese not 3 times but twice, with a 10-minute hiatus in between, argues Levine. When the first attack happened, on Austin Street, a shout from a window scared Moseley away. In addition, a retired police officer recalls that, as a boy, he saw Genovese staggering down Austin Street and Moseley fleeing in the opposite direction, and that his father called the police. Others have also said that they called, Levine adds. As Genovese made her unsteady way around the corner and down an alley to the back vestibule of the building where she lived, Moseley returned and attacked her again, out of sight of the Austin Street windows, says Levine. A man whose apartment had a view of the second stabbing contacted another resident, who immediately called the police, according to the trial. The woman then rushed to the mortally wounded Genovese, holding her in her arms until the ambulance came, according to trial testimony. Source: the American Psychological Association. Senator Knowledge said. Honestly, it can be hard to really verify when there's such a long-standing, and oftentimes, medically legally cited, myth, but here's what I've pieced together. There were 2 attacks, the last of which was fatal. There were varying degrees of confusion among the neighbors as to what was going on. Several 911 calls were made over the course of the night by witnesses. Only 1 or 2 people were reported as saying that they didn't want to help, but thanks to police records making either an honest error or a lazy mistake, the news story became that pretty much everyone shared that sentiment. Subsequently, this story became a psychological hit, and even I was taught it in a college philosophy class at one point, as well as in high school. If you're interested or want to try to verify things, I'd highly suggest researching further on the internet. Honestly, this alleged case study in how bystanders react is itself a case study in how false but interesting myths spread. Alterus UA said. And the opposite is even further from the truth. When modern books or TV shows demonstrate a medieval or fantasy pseudo-medieval society where characters basically think like modern-day Western atheists agnostics. Gaunt, to use a broadly known example, was a bad offender in this, with the religion predominantly reduced to decoration and fights for power and hardly important for the vast majority of characters. But you'd basically find that in most media which feature Middle Ages or a plane that is reminiscent of medieval times. While people did not know the whole doctrine, did select what to believe in and did mix it up with superstitions, bits of other religions etc., their mindset was absolutely not something similar to a modern Western atheist. Also, the skepticism of the great thinkers of the past was most often not about the existence of the supernatural, but about the clergy or particular bits of the doctrine. The J-Doc said. Trickle-down economics. Giving rich people breaks doesn't make for a wealthy middle class and the reduction of poverty, it just makes richer rich people. See, Jeff Bezos. The greatest generation, and their parents, spent their lives creating opportunities and opening doors for their children and grandchildren. And the baby boomers walked through the door and immediately slammed it shut for everyone after them. High corporate tax rates, strong unions, high estate taxes, strong civic policies, like building libraries, schools, and investing in education and literacy programs, low housing costs, to speak of a few, created a thriving and growing middle class. The children of that middle class lowered corporate tax rates, busted unions, cut estate taxes, cut funding to schools and healthcare, implemented requirements for down payments and credit checks for home ownership, and pushed their kids to go to university while making education so expensive that it saddled their descendants with oppressive debt. The rich got richer, and lobbied government to let them keep making themselves richer while simultaneously making it harder for everyone to make ends meet? Giving the rich more money doesn't help you. Zenulai said. A lot of luck turns out to be a philosophy of common sense rather than some sort of magic force. Walking under a ladder is a poor idea because there's the increased probability of hitting said ladder and disturbing who is atop, spilling paint or tools or bringing injury to yourself or them atop if they should fall. Yes, of course you could be careful, walk beneath the ladder with no contact or consequence, but that misses the point. One could also safely nap in an open windowsill without falling out. If that was a common practice, perhaps we would say it's unlucky to do so people might be persuaded against it, believing the danger is something less in their control than they may realize. Now black cats and clovers and horseshoes are just some hocus pocus, but opening an umbrella indoors will very likely knock something over. Pilot program said. The issue is physics. Anyone who has looked at the hard math of traveling hundreds of light years can see the problems. It takes like 20,000 years. Otherwise they must possess FTL, which your understanding of physics prevents. Believe in alien visitation? Please enlighten us as to their means of locomotion, thanks. Gray aliens are basically a modern version of trolls and fairies, a cultural manifestation of our collective unconscious. Quarantine Titans said. A lot of people who grew up in the 50s and 60s to this day still believe lemmings commit mass suicide by jumping in the Arctic Ocean. While it's true lemmings will migrate and bunch up at a river or lake shore, they can swim across it and frequently do. However, as is the case with many migrations, some lemmings will misjudge the length of the swim and accidentally drown. Despite the vast majority of them surviving the swim, the remnant few corpses fed a long-standing local legend of lemmings using large bodies of water to become a hero. Suddenly, the myth was wildly popularized by a Disney documentary, White Wilderness. This documentary showed dramatic footage of a column of lemmings running over a cliff into the Arctic Ocean. Well, so says the voiceover at least. The truth is, the footage was not taken in the Arctic Circle, but in Alberta. They weren't at the Arctic Ocean, they were at the Bow River. And lemmings are not native to that area, so the ones shown in the film were imported or purchased from local children who kept them as pets. Yeah. Dark turn. The lemmings were then disoriented by putting them on turntables, stressed, abused, and then chased over the cliff by the Disney film crews. For decades afterward, the lemming has been erroneously attributed to mindlessly suicidal creatures. While it may make for an amusing reference in a newspaper comic or serve as a versatile idiom attributed to destructively reckless abandon of all reason, there's still a significant contingent of older folks who saw Disney's White Wilderness and legitimately believe the myth about Jamestown lemming cults. Dino Plushie said. Marxist principles socialism. There's a reason why socialism, Leninism and the other isms have different names. It's because they are different things. They have the same base ideology but do things differently. However, the largest difference in between all of them was that in Leninism, Stalinism and whatever Pol Pot was doing had the leader and conditions far greater than the rest of the country, while socialism, communism and Marxism would have every citizen living the same lifestyle. People say it hasn't been tried out yet because it has literally not been tried out yet. Realistic Truck said. The person who first peddled the myth was hired by Epstein's brother. He was fired from 2 previous medical cases. He said it was impossible to break your neck from a standing hanging. Read what the medical books have to say about that. 3 medical examiners disagreed with his findings. Cameras are routinely broken in jail, look it up. Epstein had tried to commit suicide a month before and was saved by the people who supposedly killed him. So do you believe a biased doctor who got basic medical facts wrong and was fired from 2 previous cases, or do you believe the actual case evidence, 3 Me's countless peer reviews in Epstein's history? Christine Bitten said. That a magic man impregnated his own mother before he was born so you could be forgiven for the sins he created you to commit because he loves you, and if you don't love him back he'll burn you for an eternity while your dead relatives eat oysters and jam with Hendrix. And if you want to get together with other people who also believe that, you have to do it on a specific day of the week in a building run by people who don't pay tax, and yet still tell you how to vote. Because something morality. Gorilla Magnet said that the Founding Fathers were all religious Bible thumpers. This is mostly what drives the right's need to be religious in the U.S. Thomas Jefferson was an outright atheist and in fact called the Book of Revelations a pack of lies. George Washington was, at best, indifferent to organized religion. His true feelings on religion were, to the best of my knowledge, never stated in his lifetime. And speaking of religion, another myth, it's a sin to swear. There isn't one syllable in the Bible that says that it's a sin to say fuck or shit. Cursing is never ever mentioned. The Yellow Ranger said, well, if we were to talk about the average female and average Malay, I would bargain the average Malay is stronger, therefore making them better at labor-intensive jobs requiring strength. Of course a strong woman could likely match or outperform an average man, but then a strong man would equally outperform the strong woman. Zeta Eggs said, I mean, in some cultures they do think they exist. I think it is in Haiti, where they have this thing of sirens, mermaids that lure you to any large body of water and steal you and force you to work for them, and when if come back you come back different. BC they took your voice so you wouldn't say anything, or if you say anything you die a few days after. I personally believe in it, but it's very interesting to read about. Extreme Boysenberry said that the human body loses most of its heat through the head. That study was conducted on US troopers in cold conditions, and the heads were literally the only part of their bodies with no fabric over them, so no ST. They scored the highest. Also, I've run into quite a few people who believe that glass is not a solid, but a super viscous liquid, and that's why the stained glass in churches is thicker on the bottom. The real answer is that the glass blowers at the time didn't have the tech to make their glass even on all sides and put in the tiles with the thicker side facing down so it could hold better in the lead framing. Elofthwisp said, the when War of the Worlds was played on the radio, everyone thought it was real and that actual Martians had landed causing mass chaos. Stories being read on the radio were common enough that most people twigged, and even those who didn't waited for the end where they revealed it was fictional. There was no mass hysteria. Sure, there might have been isolated incidents, but it wasn't a common occurrence. Applisanderanges 990 said, such out the snake venom, it almost always does more harm than good, also can poison the sucker. Drink milk after drinking something like bleach or detergent. No, don't call toxic control. Drink milk after eating poisonous mushrooms. No, never do that, call toxic control. Mushroom is always kind of eat. If the hymenium, don't laugh, it's the structure you see from the bottom, is sponge, not gills. There are several sips that are very poisonous for small kids and elderly. Quite a problem in my country. Giving spirits to shocked people, don't if they are growing kids, with heart problems, epilepsy, very bad kidneys or liver, things like Crohn and Mees. Tap water is always healthiest. Sweating, heart issues, digestion issues. Never drink pure water after heavy sweating or diarrhea. Add a little salt or carbon tablets with minerals. Practical Fudge 1667 said, stop animal testing. It's cruel and unnecessary. No scientist wants to do animal testing, but there are so many things you can't research without having a living organism. For example, development biology. You can't replace a fly or mouse. They are too complicated. Or ethological research. How could you measure the intelligence of a parrot without having a parrot? Also, scientists have to make sure they make it as painless as possible, to reduce, replace and refine the animal testing where it's possible. There are also cute tests, like a research about if rats like to play or another one if they like to be tickled. Of course it's better when animal testing gets reduced, and it would be great if it could be stopped, but it's not possible.